Hi, I'm Joe Rourke. Like most people in business, I like looking at financial data. One of the things that I find is that by looking at certain financial information, you often find the small changes that you can make to your business that have a major impact on profitability, whether it be changes in terms of areas where you're spending money in terms of cost of goods sold, whether it be specific customers where you're having to lose money on. By looking at the financial data, you can have a major impact on your business health. Now, oftentimes analysis takes a lot of time. Pulling out information, analyzing the information, really figuring out what you want to look for. So we've put together the financial workbook so that we actually have done a lot of the analysis for you. So you can go through and look at the analysis. You can use the Explore screens to find out why certain things may be happening. Really find out areas in where you can have an impact on your business. So what I want to do is take a quick look through some of the capabilities of the financial workbook. We also have a series of deep dives through various aspects of the workbook that you can look at later. So let's take a look at the financial workbook. On the main page of the financial workbook, like all of our workbooks, you'll see your company name, the last time you actually updated the workbook, and a refresh button. The refresh button goes out to Autotask and downloads the most current information. It takes about a minute to download and update all of the trending and analysis that you'll see in the workbook from there on. The first screen that I want to take a look at is the Metrics That Matter screen. And the Metrics That Matter screen get defaulted with about 11 of the metrics that we feel out of the box would be helpful. You can change these and customize these for your own use, but they span revenue and cost and operating expenses and average revenue per client, accounts above a certain threshold that you might be interested in, larger type deals, accounts where you may be losing money on. At a glance, this Metrics That Matter screen is really kind of show you information about a specific month, how you're doing year to date to that month, against what your targets happen to be, what your plan numbers happen to be. I can even see how I changed this month to the previous month, how I've been trending in terms of the spark line over the course of the year. Last 2 months still not complete, and I can see how I've been meeting or missing my plan numbers. So at a glance, I look at this and I can see trending. I can see trending month. I can see trending year to date. I can also see highlighted the specific areas where I'm missing out. Cost of goods sold is actually higher than my plan. I wanted to keep under $100,000 for the month. I was 192. Now, great, the fact that I can actually see that my actual revenue is much higher. I also see that accounts where I may be losing money on. So you could expect that some recurring service contracts over the course of the month you may lose money on. You have a specific amount that you're charging for, and there's a certain amount of time that it takes, and it may be some months are higher than others. So you get a glance at that of those two pieces of information, and it helps you get a feel for how is the business performing. Overall, this business looks like it's performing very well. We also provide a financial gauges page. And the financial gauges page allows you to select an individual month, either through a pull-down or selector, and take a look at how that month is doing, but not in terms of numbers, but in terms of how you're doing in terms of a gauge. And the cool thing about these gauges, and you can kind of see these revenue gauges, is that this is basically saying that my revenue is 129% of plan. That's a lot different than saying whether or not something is an actual versus a plan number. 129% means I'm over my plan. And what you can do with these gauges in terms of this kind of revenue is you can actually change very quickly how you want the gauges to appear. So I could say 150%. And now you can actually see where I am in terms of the plan. Oftentimes when it comes to revenue, you're in the green when you hit over 100%. But did you fail plan just because you're under 100%? If you're 95% of the plan, maybe that's yellow. Maybe you're only really kind of concerned when you are under 90% of plan. And so basically that's what someone winds up doing is they put in these numbers to actually indicate, what is it that I'm looking to indicate as an indicator in terms of the plan. So you might say that I really am interested in 75 to 90% is in red. 90% to 100% is in yellow, and over 100% is in green. Likewise, anything that actually is in the red is actually highlighted with this quick indicator. So you see immediately graphs that may be in red. In this case, again, this was what we talked about. Our cost of goods sold was above what we had, 193% of what our plan number happened to be for that month. So quickly and easily you can make these graphs work for you of what you want to see. There's a series of graphs where you can specify how many graphs you want to appear. You can select the graphs, the data that you want to appear in the graph, whether it be gross margin, by simply using a pull down and choosing whether or not you want to see year-to-date or non-year-to-date information. So really customizable. Also, you'll also see is that there's an opposite. If this is where I'm targeting that I want my cost of goods under a number. This is where I want my percent revenue above a number. So you can see whether I go red, or green, yellow, or red. I really want to be under my 100% number. Actually, cost of goods sold 50% would be a great number to have. So that's really kind of the financial gauges. Financial trends year to date gives you a graphical presentation, trending analysis of your data to plan. So in this case, revenue to plan and cumulative year-to-date revenue to plan, all presented in thousands. So you can see where you are relative to plan. Even if you miss a certain month, how am I doing year-to-date? That's really kind of what you're often interested in when it comes to financial analysis. What we also show is the distribution based on contract type. It's often important that all revenue isn't the same. It may be that you're trying to grow your recurring service business. Certainly you're going to see that certain types of revenue actually are more profitable than others. So we provide a kind of comparison of year-to-date revenue. We also show you average client percentage of revenue, distribution of clients based on the size of the overall revenue that they're generating in a month for you. If you're trying to move up market or move below market. Year-to-date accounts by revenue. So who's actually giving you the revenue? And more importantly, and we'll dive into each individual section in later videos, is we give you breakdowns on cost of goods sold. We give you a breakdown in terms of the gross margin. How much money are you keeping? What's most profitable for you? We give you year-to-date accounts by gross margin, by who the bottom clients happen to be, who you might be losing money on, accounts in terms of the percent gross margin. So you get that in terms of just easy to look at trending analysis, seeing where you are in corresponding to plan. And then we also provide year-to-date numbers. So the year-to-over-year comparison is a comparison of how I'm doing this year versus how I did last year. And don't worry if you weren't using Autotask last year, although I hope you were. You can actually put these numbers in manually as a comparison. So either it'll take the information directly out of Autotask, or you can update it with the numbers for comparison purposes. But it allows you to actually see how you're comparing not only year-to-date information in terms of average revenue and client and that, but also what may be the distribution of by contract type. So are you moving into more of a recurring service model this year versus last year? And kind of showing you that capability. How am I trending in terms of my gross margin? So that type of analysis, all in terms of the year-over-year, we'll dive in a little bit later on some of those things. The Explorer screens are really where the trending analysis tells you what happened. The Explorer screens allow you to identify why certain things happen. And we actually have 3 different Explorer screens as part of the financial workbook. The first is really an exploration of your revenue and cost and gross margin. Like all of our Explorer screens, it gives you kind of these quick filters that you can actually slice the information the way you want to, where you can drill into specific months or specific quarters, and then provides a series of graphs that shows you information regarding the data associated with that quarter. So one of the things you can quickly do is you can highlight one month or several months that you want to see, and then you'll see the overall trending of revenue and the costs, the direct costs that were associated with that. Now these are all the time and all the costs that were associated with generating that revenue. So this doesn't include things like sales expense, but it includes the time that maybe your people spent keeping that recurring service contract going, and any direct costs that were associated to it. I see the total revenue and the cost. I see it by quarter, so I can see a comparison. And then what I do is I get kind of a breakdown of revenue by contract type. So I can kind of see revenue that was generated on a recurring service contract And this is where you kind of see some interesting things, where you see recurring service contract revenue, where I had 1.6 million dollars of recurring service revenue over that 2-quarter period. But look at how much of my margin came from recurring service. And that's what you'll typically see, and that's what you want to understand am I making the most money? Is most money staying into my pocket on certain types of work? I get that kind of revenue by distribution, managed services versus project work versus sales and procurement work, or based on any kind of standard work that I wind up doing. And I get that distribution, and I can see that kind of information based on the contract categories that you define yourself. So you can get as kind of granular as you want in Autotask in terms of those contract categories. I also see my margins, and then I see percent margins. So here, it's like, a 71% margin on my recurring service work. Do I want to be doing a lot of fixed price work and keeping 17%, or do I want to do more recurring service work that I get 71%? It kind of gives you that kind of comparison and that kind of breakdown when you're looking at data like this. Likewise, I kind of can drill into my revenue by billing types. So I can drill in and say I'm really kind of interested in my billing types. And this allows me to drill into things like fixed price and say, just show me my fixed price work and show me how that was doing. My project and project costs, my milestone payments, expenses, subscription, service period, labor. Kind of shows you that kind of breakdown here in terms of information. Or I could drill into time and materials and then see the time and material work where it was labor, it was expense, it was project work, and see how that actually worked overall in terms of it. So this is where you can drill into those specific types, and you can even drill into a specific account. You can drill into a specific contract that was associated to the work. Often what we also kind of are interested in, and I'm going to deselect the contract type and show you, is that it also allows you to actually show you the top revenue, top client by revenue based on the current slicers, and the bottom ones. So overall, I can see what client has generated over those 2 quarters the most amount of revenue. But I could also drill and say, really I'm interested in, for my fixed price contracts, who are the clients that generated the most revenue, and how much was it? In terms of it. You can actually see also, for clients, what were the ones that had that were the bottom clients in terms of generating revenue in terms of fixed price. Or I could show recurring service contracts. So here's the recurring service contracts that were done. Really kind of drilling into those specific areas. Margins. Interestingly, one of the things you'll see is that just because Blue Star was the second highest revenue, they're actually not in terms of my margin, because it cost me too much to actually service them. So here, if I'm purely looking at revenue, I think Blue Star is my second-tier customer, when really they're not. It's really second tier is communications, then it's Tesco, then it's Hanger. Blue Star isn't even in the top 5. And that's what you really want to be taking a look at. You also may want to look at who the clients are that have them that have the negative margin. These are customers who, within that 2-month period, actually spent more money than needed. So you get that kind of view of the accounts, and of course on all these Explore screens we also provide the data below on the specific accounts. The utilization is really focused in on drilling into overall business, but it's really about hours. This is all about where people are spending their time. And I can actually look at everyone in the company and see hours per month, or in this case, I may drill into one specific resource. And if I drill into one specific resource or one specific type of time, I can actually see, what were the total number of hours that were worked. This includes both the service time and the regular hours that people put on their timesheets for like internal meetings. And I see what hours were actually billable hours. These were hours that were put in that the system recognizes as a billable hour type. I see a distribution of the hours by time: project time, service time, regular time, personal time. I can see the hours by work type, billable type. I can see the various hours by resource. This isn't affected by Susan, so Susan was the number 2 person in terms of the total hours and, in fact, billables for the time period that it was selected. In fact, I may just want to choose a specific year, and I might want to choose a specific group of months, and just take a look at her hours and her billed hours for those specific months. Okay, and likewise, I can look at the individual work types, and maybe what I'm interested in is, what about the regular hours? What time? Well, here's personal time. Within that period, 88 hours of personal time, 62 hours that was considered internal time, 37 hours of training time, and really kind of getting into specifics of how people were spending their time in terms of regular time or in terms of service hours, remote support, on-site support, travel time, correspondence, admin. Quickly kind of seeing that. If I didn't want to look at an individual, I could say I'm interested in holiday time. Okay, so show me all of the holiday time over the course of that period, and I can kind of see there was 40 hours that was in May, and there was 40 hours that was in July. Maybe I want to open that up, and I want to look at the course of the year, and I can kind of see, as I would expect, people are going to take some more time over the holidays, so the time went up. Likewise, for holiday time, I can go down through and I can look at individuals who spent the most hours in terms of holiday time, or emergency support or help desk. Really the way in which you can kind of click around and basically see either on a department level basis or a resource basis how people have been spending their time. The next Explorer screen is a margin screen, and what this is about is drilling in and taking a look at, either on a per account basis, but probably more on a contract basis, where are you making the most money? So what this does is this presents an axis that shows you revenue, but correspondingly shows you the gross margin percentage. Gross margin percentage is the amount of money that you as a percentage you had left over from the revenue. So if I charged $1,000 and it cost me $250 to deliver on that, then I get to keep $75, and I have a 75% margin. So this allows you to drill in, and for a specific time period like this quarter or a year or a specific month, if you wanted to, you can actually look at like fixed price contracts, and I can pick out like one contract here where it was a fixed price contract for $3,900, but I lost 111%. So it cost me over $4,000 out of my pocket to bring in. Actually, it's worse than that. It didn't cost me $4,000. It cost me because since it's minus, it cost me about $8,000 of cost to get $4,000 of revenue, and those kind of things can quickly get you out of business. Now, sometimes fixed price contracts are associated with recurring service work or something that's profitable. What this allows you to do is drill in and actually see, again, how am I doing? Look at all of my recurring service contracts. It's like, yeah, I didn't make a lot of money on this one, but I haven't lost any money. There's a real concentration in recurring service at the high end. My time and material contracts. So didn't have a lot of time and material contracts, but you can kind of see 50%, 1%, 0%. And you can drill into the types of contracts, even maybe looking at where you didn't have a specific contract. So losing money, and a lot of that may be specifically because you didn't have a contract. Maybe you provided the service not under contract and you never charged anything for it. So if you really want to take a look at that, again, you can drill into specific accounts and take a look at how specific accounts are doing, and you can go down through and actually look at the accounts by margin. And one of the interesting things also is to look down through, because there may be certain accounts that don't have a percent, gross margin because there was no revenue associated to the cost. So these are just accounts that I lost money on, $50 here, $20 here. But I did some work, and there was no direct invoiced attributed during that month to that account. Of course, associated to all of the data, graphical data in this Explorer screen, we also provide data in a spreadsheet format. The current fiscal year will show you the metrics that matter, and I'll be showing you in a subsequent video about how you can modify the metrics that matter. But you provide the metrics that matter, and then we provide a P&L of revenue, costs, providing you capability to add additional revenue streams or cost streams that aren't part of Autotask that you want to record and actually have it be used within there. This is all the information that's in Autotask, but Autotask doesn't always contain all the information. And then you get gross margin, operating expenses, and then we do the revenue analysis, revenue by account, revenue ranges, and we'll also be showing you how you can modify these ranges because revenue, so that you can actually see how many accounts are in certain revenue range buckets and see how that's trending over time. The previous fiscal year is done. You can also go in and take a look at the labor utilization. Labor utilization, this is how we calculate out cost of goods sold. Is for every resource that you have, we go in and we identify what were the service hours and the indirect hours on a per month basis, total hours. But then we look into Autotask and get their burden rate. This is the burden rate that you enter about what the cost is per hour for that person. And this allows you to actually allocate their costs for what were the non-service hours, what are the regular hours, the meeting time and stuff like that they entered, and what percentage of that is cost of goods and what percentage of that is an operating expense cost. Because if it isn't directly attributable to a ticket, as it isn't at the time isn't directly to a project, then it isn't associated with a contract. It isn't a cost of goods sold unless you indicate so. So this adds up all that. You can kind of see the information, and we'll dive into this sheet a little bit more in a subsequent video as well. The final screen that I'll show you is the config screen. Config screen allows you to easily go in and basically set up your workbook. So that's kind of a wrap-up of kind of the financial trending data that's available within the workbook. I hope that gave you a good feel for what's available within the financial workbook, and I hope it's valuable to your business. Thank you very much.